these so-called smart motorways, but as I've said before, they really are anything but. And now we learn that cameras designed to spot broken down vehicles on those lanes are not being monitored all the time. Highways England insists the routes, which have no hard shoulder, are as safe as normal motorways because they've regularly spaced refuges for breakdowns. Well, they don't, do they? Motoring groups have attacked the scheme, which has cost £6 billion after a series of fatal accidents resulting from stricken drivers stopping in the near side lane before they reach these so-called refuges. Now it emerges control room staff are not constantly monitoring the hundreds of CCTV cameras on the motorway network. Responding to a Freedom of Information request, Highways England said, as with any organisation using many hundreds of CCTV cameras, it's not possible for our operators to monitor every camera all of the time. Peter Roger is head of driving at IAM RoadSmart and joins me now. Isn't this what we really needed to hear, to press pause for the idea of installing more of these roads? Good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Nick, and yes, it is. The original smart motorway on the M42 a few years back really surprised us all because it came up safer than what had been there before. But it has been done fully with proper monitoring and enough refuges. And the ones that have followed on, the costs have been shaved by the look of...
Hello? Hello? I think we've lost it. Let's go to the other guest while we try and get Mr. Roger back. Claire Mercer is with the organisation Smart Motorways Kill. She's raised almost £10,000 in her efforts to try and get them scrapped. This follows losing her husband, Jason Mercer, on the M1. I believe it was last year. Is that correct, Mrs. Mercer? Good morning.
Morning, yes, it was June last year.
Terribly sorry to hear those circumstances. And now we see, which is something that possibly you and others feared, they're not even watching these cameras all the time. How do you react to that, Claire?
Well, it's just yet another punch in the stomach. It's just, I mean, we always knew that they couldn't be watching every camera all the time, even if they were sat in front of them. These are humans. They've got a lot of cameras in front of them. They've got other tasks to perform. They're very stretched, and I can only imagine what they see on a daily basis. I mean, we're hearing stories of camera operators and emergency services getting PTSD from the circumstances that they work in. But then to find that that the Highways England haven't even allowed for them to be monitored, it's just, so these smart motorways, it gives you this indication of, high tech. Well, we already know that the radar isn't installed in 82% of cases. Now the cameras aren't monitored. The ERAs are nowhere near as close as they've been told.
Is that what I call the refuges, the ERA?
Sorry, yes. Emergency refuge area.
I see, right, yeah.
Yeah, they're nowhere near as close as they've been told repeatedly for over a decade to put them. I mean, if you break down, you can't move. It's in the name, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And so these smart motorways are anything but. There is no technology involved in them. And they've just basically taken features off and not added them.
And just to clarify, your organisation, Smart Motorways Kill, so it's not a review, it's not a reworking of these lanes, you want them all scrapped?
Yeah, they can have all the tech they like. They can have the cameras, they can have flashing lights, they can do what they want, but I want a hard shoulder back in every single circumstance.
And what of those who would say that if they're correctly monitored and if you have the right refuges and if you have people actually watching the cameras and you possibly have radar, then it does provide another lane for traffic in congested areas?
Yeah, but then it's going to be more expensive than a conventional motorway, and this was only ever done to do it on the cheap. I don't know why they wanted to widen them. What about commitments to climate change and things like that? Why are we making the roads bigger? We should be making them smaller. But they tried to do it on the cheap, and to do it properly would be more expensive, which is why they've not done it properly.
I'm very grateful for your time. Claire Mercer is from Smart Motorways Kill. She's raised almost £10,000 in her legal challenges. This is after she lost her husband, Jason Mercer, last June. Now, just to give you the facts, currently, so-called smart motorways, as they're called, account for 416 miles of road and are expected to double by around 2025, roughly double. Let's try and get Peter Rogers from IAM RoadSmart back in. Surely the argument is when you hear stories such as that, you can have almost as many refuges as you like. There's still dangers.
Well, if you think about what a hard shoulder actually is, it's a continuous refuge. If you've got enough refuges along the side of the road, and my way of thinking about that is if you break down, you can see the one you're trying to get to.
But an electric car just stops, Mr. Roger. You don't have anything left in it. You can't sort of coast in first or go along in a flat car with a flat tyre. You've just got no car.
There are some issues with any kind of vehicle that are going to bring it to a sudden grinding halt. And having worked on motorways, that means people come to a sudden grinding halt in lane 3 next to a hard shoulder with 2 lanes of traffic. There is a point at which you can't suddenly make the world perfect.
Well, respectfully, you can. You can certainly you can make it a lot better by reinstating the hard shoulder, because with the electric car, those few yards you've got when you lose all power, you just turn left and you're out of there. Instead of, oh my God, the nearest refuge is half a mile up there or even 400 metres up the road. Up a hill, by the way, in an electric car. What's going to happen then?
Well, an electric car, like a petrol car, has momentum. It's not going to come to a literally instant stop. And in that respect, it's largely similar to the way in which
if you're going up a hill.
Car. If you're going up a hill in a petrol car and you turn the engine off with the car in neutral, it doesn't stop instantly. But we're going down a bit of
we're not, are we? We're all going to be in electric cars in about 10 or 15 years' time if the government has its way.
In 10 or 15 years' time, a number of things are going to be different. But we're getting into an argument over something that isn't what you rang up about. The smart motorways surprised us all when the first one was built, because we all said this will be a disaster. And it wasn't. It actually proved itself to be safer than what had been there before.
I would say that lives being lost is a disaster, personally.
I would say that lives being lost is a disaster. As someone who stood on motorways dealing with such things in a professional basis, I know how big a disaster that is.
So when the boss of Highways England last year says lives have been lost, that to me is a disaster, because the implementation
the important thing to do is to reduce the number of lives lost to the absolute minimum that we can. And when the first smart motorway was introduced, it lost fewer lives than the conventional motorway that had been there before.